Today we're looking at interviews, how your band can get them, how to act during them, and generally how to not ruin your career during one. Welcome to Pro Tips for Independent Bands, the show where we give you honest and candid advice about the music industry. I'm in a pretty good position of having been on either side of the interview process. I've been on radio interviews with some of my older bands, I've had podcast style interviews for some of my solo work, and I've conducted loads of interviews for Stab Panda in both podcast and YouTube styles. Let's get started with some advice on how to actually get interviews. Finding an interview is a lot like finding a gig. You could watch our How to Get Gigs video and replace the word gig with the word interview and the word venue with the word blog or journalist. Just look out for local radio or blogs and then get in touch with them politely. They probably need content for their blog or show. You could also watch our How to Contact Industry Professionals video from season 1 of Pro Tips. Any publicity is going to be helpful to you, especially in the early days of being in a band. Don't turn down an interview because you think the show or the blog isn't particularly well followed. Often it's the smaller shows that will be a lot more accommodating and actually give you something you want from an interview. From my own experience, it's actually the bigger interviews and the bigger shows that have been the most disappointing. Either due to the inflexibility of the show's format, or because the show is so well followed that they actually can't give a lot of time to unsigned bands, which is stupid. Will the show play your music? Hopefully, that'd be cool, right? But don't be discouraged if they don't, because actually not all interviews are about you or your band. That sounds insane, I know, but remember that collaborations are at least as important as a straight up interview. For example, Snoop Dogg appearing on Martha Stewart's cooking show tells you way more about Snoop Dogg as a person than a traditional one-on-one interview ever could.
Is this ready to eat? 'Cause you can't play like this.
Yeah, right there.
We'll give you some interview tips in a moment, but first, we're going to pay some bills.
This is one of the most common ways in which we all use money, as a medium of exchange for goods. It's hard to imagine doing business without money.
Pro Tips for Independent Bands is, and I hope always will be, free for the artists who need it most. You can help us though by throwing money at us, and we've set up a Patreon account to help you do just that. A $1 subscription helps us out plenty, but we've set up rewards for those able to donate a little bit more. Rewards like merchandise and bespoke album advice. The money from your subscriptions goes towards things like better lighting and better camera gear, getting guests on the show, training our staff, and way more. We're currently paying for this stuff out of our own pockets, so I hope you can appreciate why we're asking for your help. Please take a moment to look at what is on offer and how you can help over on patreon.com/stabpanda. There's probably going to be a URL here.
It is money which makes possible our complex international society of business, trade, and travel.
So tips for the actual interview. First off, don't bring your dealer to the interview, because why would you? But this has happened to us and it's been super awkward. Please don't do that. Work out how many people are actually wanted on the show. It's probably going to be only 1 or 2 of you rather than the entire band, because trying to fit an entire band into a studio isn't a lot of fun. The interviewer might ask questions to each of you equally in turn, because they assume that you're there because you want to talk, because why else would you be there? But actually, if you're just there because everyone else is there and you have nothing to say, that's going to be a bit awkward. So you get to choose the most talkative and interesting members of your bands to attend the interview. If only you could do that on stage as well. If you can only send one person for whatever reason, just make damn sure they're actually able to talk. So thank you, Graham Chapman, for joining us. Very excited to have you here. Could we perhaps start by talking about some of your influences? Who is it that you, musically speaking, draw inspiration from? Who do you listen to? Who do you enjoy?
I like Tom Jones and Tom Jones.
If your answers to questions are shorter than the actual question, you're doing something wrong. It can be hard to elaborate on certain things, but remember that what is boring to you might be really interesting to a listener. If something's boring to you, it's probably because you do it day in, day out, like music if you're a musician. But the person listening to the interview probably isn't a musician, so actually will find it interesting. Try and get copies of the questions you're going to be asked in advance, but then don't script your answers, okay? Just get a rough idea of the sort of thing that you might want to say. Some interviewers might want your knee-jerk responses to questions, so could be a little awkward about that, but I think you're perfectly within your rights to request at least an approximation of what you're going to be talking about. Hopefully the interviewer or the producer or whoever's organising this wants the show to be good as well, so if you think that having the questions is going to allow you to do a better show, hopefully they'll be forthcoming. Where'd you come up with the name for Ill Pigeon?
Well, I was in London and I kicked one.
Right.
And it didn't look well.
Regarding swearing and icky language, some interviewers will say that however you want to portray yourselves as a band is pretty much your own deal. They themselves may or may not swear, and that's pretty much up to them, right? You guys have to decide between you whether you want your band to be safe for a younger audience or NSFW or whatever you want to call it. Other interviewers might ask you to mind the language, and actually you pretty much have to respect that, because remember, they could just not publish your interview and you've just wasted everyone's time.
What's next for Ill Pigeon? What are you doing? Tour? New album? EP?
Probably have some lunch. I might have a bath first. Yeah, because
Please do.
Lastly, if you're doing an interview on video for either TV or YouTube, try your best not to look like death unless being sickly is somehow part of your brand. So there it is, our tips for getting and how to act during an interview. I hope that's been useful to some of you. Our next episode comes out on February 10th. We'll see you then. Thanks again for watching. Please be sure to check out our Patreon page when you have a moment. You can also subscribe and hit the like button and leave a comment with any questions or suggestions or just anything you want to get off your chest, you know? On screen right now there is a link to a video which YouTube thinks, of all our content, you will most enjoy, so you should click that if you dare. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.